Yet again, it's Big News Wednesday. Welcome everyone to the Damage Report. I'm John Ederola. That's Jayar Jackson, host of the Watch List. Jayar, what's going on?
Just hanging in there, bro. Just hanging in there. I realized last night I do more talking than I could imagine in my entire lifetime. Just wondering how long this voice will hold up.
I don't know. I remember I'm gonna whine after the fact to complete the circle of me whining to you beforehand. So like a week or two ago, I did both hours of the main show and then the bonus episode. And by the end of it, I was thinking, if I never spoke again, I'd be okay with that. Just you, for an introvert, it's a lot of talking. But anyway, it was fun. It was a good show too, because we had Francesca on for both hours, which is always fun. In any event, I know we're not gonna like totally like hash this out like live on air or whatever. People are a little bit worried. They're like, what's gonna happen next week with Big News Wednesday?
Why?
So we need to figure that out because I've heard there's a scheduling change going on.
I will, yes, we have been announcing this is the last week of the morning edition of the live show of the Watch List. Used to be 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. Will be shifting to just before the Young Turk show. So 2 o'clock Pacific time and 5 o'clock Eastern over there as we flow right in to the main show. It'll be a lovely time, but no more mornings. Sorry, you guys. So that means I'll be prepping all day when I'm usually sitting here talking to you, John. We're going to figure this out.
Yeah, you're going to be prepping all day immediately after being on my show. So we're gonna figure all of that out. It sort of makes sense though. Like if you had told me the second show on the TYT network was going to be Jayar hosting a show that leads into the Young Turks, like it's the pre-show for it, sort of, I would be like, that makes sense. It sort of makes sense that you'd be doing that because you've been with TYT for so long.
Makes sense.
But in any event, this is Big News Wednesday. We'll see what happens going forward, and I'm gonna twist some arms to continue it. But anyway, we do have a big show for today. The committees are engaged, they're fully powered, except for the ones that they're shutting down, and have already begun investigations of Joe Biden. So that's gonna be fun. We've got an escalation in the brewing feud between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, but much more importantly, who Ron DeSantis actually is. The stuff he's doing behind the scenes that I think is far more worrisome than the petty bickering. More people are running for president, it probably won't matter. And why are prominent right wingers on Twitter making their accounts private? We're going to dive into that. And stick around for the full show in the aftermath. If you end up in jail, there's a plan in Massachusetts to maybe spring you from jail a little bit early if you're willing to lop off parts of your body. And Fox loses their mind over The Sims. Also, meanwhile, so everyone, stay tuned for that. That's coming up soon. In advance of that, it is time. The time has come to hit the like button and share the stream so people know we're live. That would be great. And you can send us comments, tweets, and super chats. And by the way, I thought, for a while now, we've been giving these daily Blue Apron gift cards. So if a member or a member on YouTube or a subscriber on Twitch sends like a particularly insightful or funny comment, we give them a Blue Apron gift card. And that's still going, obviously. But I want to add a potential theme. So I'm gonna be especially looking for insightful or funny answers to the question that's in my mind this week. I don't know if you saw my tweet, but I'm experiencing a brief period of existential dread. What's the point? That's the whole question. There's nothing else. I'm not saying what's the meaning because I don't believe there is any. What's the point? So what is the point to you? Send in comments, super chats, all that. And you might have an enhanced chance of getting a Blue Apron gift card.
What's the point? No, I like this. This is
the point?
And this is a part of your existential threat. By the way, the least surprising thing is John is going through this threat to his own brain. The most Ida thing ever. But I like it. It always leads to some good stuff. That's the thing.
We'll see. In any event, the show must go on. Jayar, are you ready for this thing?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Let's jump into this. It has begun. The oversight of the Biden administration is now in full effect with House Republicans on what used to be an important congressional committee, the Oversight Committee, launching multiple investigations, and we're going to break them down. So they're going to be questioning officials on alleged fraud and abuse in pandemic assistance. I think that's an interesting one. While the Judiciary Committee is going to hear from local officials about Biden's handling of issues on the southwest border. Bear in mind, there are way more of these to come, and I think they almost intentionally are starting off a little bit less 100% bat-ass crazy. So they're getting into stuff with the pandemic, but it's not like, did Fauci make of the COVID? It's like fraud and abuse, and they're doing stuff on the border rather than like, is he importing like Nigerian trans people? All of that will come, so buckle up, we're getting into it. But while we're talking about fraud and waste and pandemic assistance, I will remind you of a fun little moment in Dark Brandon social media history when they decided on the White House to point out all of the right wingers who had gotten massive PPP loans forgiven. Here's Marjorie Greene getting over $183,000 for some reason. Matt Gaetz had got $482,000 in loans forgiven. Marjorie Greene, at least, like, she technically owns a business, right? Like, so it's maybe understandable that she'd get hundreds of thousands of dollars in free money and then pretend that didn't happen and the government shouldn't help anyone else, just her. Matt Gaetz, what did that $482,000 go towards? Tuition on Venmo? Like, where did that money go? So I do believe that there was a massive amount of fraud and a massive amount of waste. I mean, that's not really debatable right now. Back in December, the Government Accountability Office estimated that more than $60 billion might have been lost to fraud in COVID unemployment programs. So that's fun. The issue is, I don't have a lot of faith in people who have personally benefited from this fraud and from this waste in seriously looking into it. Like if they do this investigation, Jayar, and they find out that, oh my God, these big companies were like wildly, like taking way more money than they actually needed. It wasn't going to who thinks that they're actually gonna blow the whistle in a serious, intellectually honest way on corporations? Like, best case scenario, they find that woke Disney did something, or M&Ms got more than they should have. But aside from that, I don't have a lot of faith in them.
Actually, my first thought was I was thinking that maybe even some of the Democrats that are in the House as these investigations ramp up, they can utilize some of these opportunities, since we're talking about it, to bring up things that you brought up, like some of these representatives and other elected officials that fleeced the government for that money, as well as they complain about it ever since. So maybe that'll be the case. But the thing is, as soon as you point out that if we find this happening with some of these corporations, some of these businesses, also, there's probably plenty of Democrats that don't want to blow the lid off of those folks either. As we already know, the biggest money in the country goes to all politicians to continue to keep their jobs, to continue to fund their campaigns. Again, we can go back to it over and over and over again. The source of many of the problems, I'd say 98% of the problems with our politicians and the way that they act, is who they're paid by and who they're told by to act based off the money that's given. So yeah, sure, if they stole a little bit, a couple $100,000 from the government and have nothing to do with it afterwards, or I'm sorry, even $1 million from the government, who cares? They gave us like $6,000, bro. We gotta have them, and they told us what to do. I'm afraid that this may end up being something that I think citizens are gonna have to recognize how ridiculous these investigations are, not from the help of other politicians looking to blow the lid.
Yeah, I think 100%, and it's what. Like, so obviously, I think we've been pretty clear here that we are girding ourselves mentally for a lot of BS investigations. But honestly, as much as like, a 6-month-long investigation of like Hunter Biden or whatever, that they're gonna, by the way, here's a prediction, they're gonna do this stuff, we all know that. They're going to do it like the January 6th thing. They're gonna try to make it like a primetime televised thing. God. I mean, it's gonna be Fox and OAN or whatever, or I don't know, maybe CNN's gonna try to get right wingers to watch by covering it, but they'll be doing that. That is at least a BS investigation of something that is BS. But isn't it kind of worse when it's a BS investigation of something that's true? Like imagine if the right wing was like, you know what? We believe we need the best fighting force in the world, so we're gonna be looking into like wasted military spending. I'd be like, no, don't do that. Because it's fake, it's not real. And then you're gonna, like, it would be wasting an opportunity for something that could be productive. And we're seeing that right now. Well, that's the PPP funds for the COVID. But like I said, that's not the only one. Judiciary Republicans are also going to be attacking Biden over the border. So witnesses planned for the panel include a man whose stepson died of a fentanyl overdose, a judge who switched to the Republican Party over concern about the frontier or about the border, and a sheriff from a border county in Arizona. So I don't know what sheriff from a border county in Arizona they're talking about, but if you just tell me that they're gonna have a sheriff from a border county in Arizona, I just think, dear God, who is this person going to be? The judge, I'm not interested. Having like the person on who steps and died of fentanyl oversight, like that is obviously purposefully weaponizing an actually tragic thing. It is incredibly sad to have lost a family member due to fentanyl. And the interesting thing about fentanyl is the vast majority of it comes through regular points of entry at the border. That's what actually happens. It is not carted across the border by someone in a messenger bag. It's in trucks and it's in cars and it goes through checks, which, there's a lot of traffic. It's not perfect. And we know, by the way, that they already get a ton of it because you have these constant tweets from like, I think it's, I'm blanking on her name now. But from Republican senators saying like the amount of fentanyl seized at the border was up 400%. This is proof that Biden is failing. And it's like, what are you talking about? They're getting more of it. But that's how it actually gets in. So once again, like there's an actual problem with overdoses. Is it just about fentanyl? No, and you'll notice that they don't talk about opioids anymore. They don't talk about the perfectly legal stuff that's sold in America that's killing tons and tons and tons of people. No, it's the convenient one that they can point to a foreigner and say they're responsible for. Oh, and it's also probably killing cops across the city from where the fentanyl actually is. It's all about the narrative, Jayar.
Well, I'm glad you pointed out that so much of the fentanyl that crosses the border is not from the ways that they're saying. I'm sure it'll come out in the investigations.
Sure.
They're gonna get to the truth, John. That's what they're looking for. Obviously, in reality, the whole point about this, as we're seeing the presidential politics fall into place, we're seeing the fights that are going on. We're seeing the primaries starting to form. We're starting to see how Nikki Haley's gonna say maybe this and that. And Donald Trump, as we saw from a year and a half ago, announced he's gonna run for president again. The whole purpose here, the whole win from the House and these the new leaders in the House is to assist in the next campaign season, so they can maybe push this. It's not to investigate anything. You kidding me? What are they going to get to? Have they said what the end game is supposed to be yet? So therefore, we can do what with the border? Therefore, we can do what with Hunter Biden? Therefore, we can do what with investigating the misuse of the funds from pandemic resources? Then what? No, the end game is to say, look at those bad Democrats and all the things they did and ignore all the same stuff. And in fact, probably even more leading that these Republicans did to say, we've got one good guy and we've got one bad guy. And what we need to do is vote for the good guy. And they're hoping that good guy in their mind is not Donald Trump, because he's got all kinds of stuff, problems that are swirling around him right now. But again, this has nothing to do with American people. It has nothing to do with constituents. It has nothing to do with people that voted them in. It's why George Santos just barely escaped from these committees. They don't care about what people have done. They care about how it's gonna look so they can get voters to be to buy into the BS, man.
100%. By the way, like good news, bad news. The good news is at least when it comes to the border, when the Republicans like say they want to build a wall, they actually like that's one thing where they actually do want to do that thing. Downside is that it's an inherently racist and wasteful thing that would have none of the effects they say it would. That's the downside. But at least there is a thing that in theory you could point to and say they want to do this thing. It's stupid, xenophobic, pointless, waste of money, but at least they do actually want to do that. Now, we need to turn to something else because that's the committees that are actually being allowed to function. There are others that are being wound down, which would be bad enough by itself. Marjorie Greene is gonna find a way to make it even more offensive. Take a look at this.
Ms. Crockett, I do agree with you about Tyree Nichols' death. I watched the video and it was tragic and extremely difficult to watch. I would also like to point out that that city is Democrat controlled and the 5 officers that have been arrested and charged are Black. And I think that this isn't an issue of racism or anything like that. I think that the judge and the jury and the trial needs to work out what happened there, but I share that with you. But I'd like to also point something that I'd hope you share with me. There's a woman in this room whose daughter was murdered on January 6th, Ashley Babbitt.
You might have been able to predict at this point in your political news watching career that that's where she was going to go with this. So she found it very hard to get through the Tyre Nichols video. I will extend an olive branch to her and say, sure, maybe she actually watched it. She seems to have watched it, though, to then make racist points at it, because she does, of course, because she's an idiot, the bumbling version of what many other right-wingers in politics are doing, which is, it looks like in this case, it's not as clear of a racial motive. She just says they were all black. It's not racist, except that it can still very much be racist. And even if you didn't care about that part, which she doesn't care at all about any of the other sort of baked in structural parts of our law enforcement system that resulted in these killings. She's not interested in actually stopping those things. This is all just designed to get her to the true victim, who is not Tyre Nichols or the many others, including their family and friends who were killed needlessly by the cops every year. It was the woman engaging in the insurrection. Here's a little bit more on that.
I hope, Mr. Chairman, look into those civil rights abuses because they're happening in a jail right here in this city, and I hope Ms. Norton will care about that as well, as well as jails across the country. I've been in that jail, and it's not just the January 6th defendants pre-trial, by the way. It's many of the inmates in there living in horrific conditions. So I think that's something that you and I can care about.
So look, the racist point, obviously terrible. The equating Tyre Nichols being hunted down and murdered with the admittedly tragic killing of Ashley Babbitt as she was part of a mob that was attempting to storm the Capitol and possibly assassinate politicians. Insane that you would equate those things. But bear in mind, this is also, she said these remarks that you just saw in response to Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, who had proposed adding a civil rights and civil liberties subcommittee. So this is a subcommittee that has previously existed. They are not allowing that, by the way. That subcommittee's gone. The civil rights and civil liberties, no focus on that anymore. And then as insult to injury, a little bit of salt into the wound, gonna use the discussion about the destruction of that subcommittee to make racist points and talk about how white conservative insurrectionists are the true victims in our society, which I might at least be willing to tolerate if she had some sort of proposal to improve the conditions in prisons. This is a rhetorical point for her. She's brought it up many times, especially focusing on solitary confinement and the conditions there, both of those terrible things that should be fixed. She doesn't seem interested in actually doing any of the fixing. It is useful to her to deploy as a rhetorical tactic to make you feel bad for people who are trying to hang Mike Pence and probably kill AOC and stuff. But beyond that, she's not interested in actually changing anything. Jayar, what do you think?
Of course not. This is the thing. You always have to ask the question when folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene go through these. What's the end point? What's your point? What are you trying to get to? Most times it's absolutely nothing. She mentioned off on the side in that first video that the city, she's talking about Memphis, where these cops killed Tyre Nichols. It's a Democrat-controlled city. Okay, why do you say that? Because the next, she's leaving it there for her supporters, people who listen to the stupid things that she says, to go, oh, that means they allow it, endorsed it, train these cops to do it, want it to happen more. Which one is it? You just allow people to think that. It's empty propaganda just looking to divide. These Democrats are the ones who are supporting cops killing citizens, black folks in the streets. Which politicians continue to ignore this problem? Which politicians talk about how BLM and many folks who surrounded these movements and these activists in the streets during the summer of 2020, finally, when people did this, which politicians were the ones saying, get them off the streets? They're complaining about nothing. They should have just should listen to the officers. That person that was murdered has nothing to do with this. These officers need to be let off the hook. Who was saying that stuff? So if you ask her the question, why are you talking about how this is a Democrat-controlled city? Does it mean they endorse the cops? Are they back in the blue? Yeah. Is it back to blue no matter who? Who are the ones who are saying this stuff? These are officers. So they try to muddy these waters with this because it's empty propaganda. It's just looking to make you hate one side or the other. And back to the main thing, vote for more Republicans to then do absolutely nothing except keep their jobs and steal more money. Number two, John, I got a lot to say. January 6th, there was tons of folks who ran up on the Capitol, majority of which were white. When they assaulted white police officers, because they like to say this about the Tyre Nichols thing, was it white on white crime? Because they definitely did that. Oh, when Ashley Babbitt was about to jump over that separator and get to white politicians, was it gonna be white on white crime? No, they won't say that stuff because that doesn't fit that narrative. One more part here. I'm sick of these videos. I didn't watch the Tyree Nichols thing. You said that maybe you gave her the benefit of the doubt that she would. Maybe she did. But I'm tired of these videos. If you think about it, I was talking to Adrienne Lawrence about this, and I told her because I think she was tired of it when she last saw one on my show. It's tiring. And the original purpose for showing these, the first one being a Rodney King back in 91 or 92, was for people to find it, and they looked up and they said, you see all of these folks who have been talking about being assaulted by cops when they're unarmed, doing nothing, being harassed and murdered like this. Finally, you see video evidence. The purpose was to try to convince racists that this stuff really happens.
Yeah.
Now that we've seen about 1,000 of these videos, do the racists seem to care that these things happen, or do they keep giving excuses why this should continue to happen? At this point, we don't need to keep showing these videos because now it's just become entertainment for these folks who like to watch it. Just like back in the day, when they used to lynch and drag black folks by the back of trucks and then have a picnic around someone being murdered. Now we're just putting it on video. I'm tired of it. Either we're gonna show it and then somehow people are convinced of the reality, or we should just stop talking about this stuff and just go to trying to change some of these reforms. Because there's nobody left to convince that these things happen. They happen over and over and over again. And all that's left is people like Marjorie Taylor Greene to spin it and say, you see how this Democrat-controlled city is doing this? It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. Sorry, I'm done.
There's no, I mean, you're brought on to talk. Yeah, I mean, I think there are people too convinced, they're just not convincible because they don't care, they're not interested. You're trying to convince people to recognize the humanity in people they don't want to see as human, which is going to be inherently difficult. Yeah, really fast. Like she thinks that she's making some sort of novel point in pointing out that simply having democratic government doesn't solve all of society's ills. I feel like at TYT we've made that point a couple of times. Feel like it. Also, by the way, I'm sure everyone watching this already understands this. But can we also point out that when she says, "Well, it's clearly not a racial thing because all of them were black." No, they weren't. What are you talking about? Yes, those 5 people were. I guess the chief of police is, but the initial cop that was involved in it and did the tasing and said, "Go chase him down and stomp him," was white. One of the EMTs that showed up and decided, I don't feel like helping, I'm just gonna stand here for a bit, who was fired, was white. So it would be a dumb racist point if it was accurate. It's just also not accurate. Let's be clear about that. By the way, I just want to give you one more quote. Representative Jasmine Crockett, who we're going to be reaching out to and hopefully bring on the show to talk about this, said about the dissolution of the subcommittee. When over 100 people every year are losing their lives in routine traffic stops, when over a dozen large police departments are operating under consent decrees for violations of their citizens' civil liberties, and when the attention of a nation is focused on the issue of civil rights, it is our duty to rise to the occasion and conduct oversight and provide accountability on this crucial subject. And I agree. Look, I don't necessarily have much faith that if it existed, it would accomplish much, even if the Democrats were still in charge, let alone if at the end of the day, there's a Republican chair to that Civil Rights and Liberties Committee. I will just point out, though, it is not a coincidence that they're getting rid of this. That they're getting rid of this literally as the nation is focused on the barbaric killing of Tyree Nichols. I think this is all intentional. It's to send a signal to their base. We don't give a damn about this stuff. We're not only not going to do anything to solve it, we're not even going to acknowledge that it's a problem in Congress. We're moving on. Forget about it. And also, we're going to score some cheap racist points like Marjorie Greene in our destruction of it. Anyway, with that said, we do have to take our first break. When we come back, a lot more news to get to, so don't go anywhere. Okay, everybody. Good Lord, there is a lot going on. We have so much to get to. I wish, we could just talk. I wish we didn't have to. Like, there's so much that I want to cover, but I also wish that we could dive into like one story for much longer. Like, just, I don't know. I wish that was possible. I wish we could just read your comments and have a little chit chat. But there's so much to get to.
Yeah, it's almost like we should have like a long form podcast where 2 of us just talk for a long time about deep dive into events, even talk to some of the fans.
That's funny. Everybody's gonna think that that's you teasing that we have a podcast about to come out. That's not what's actually going on. Anyway, with that said, let's have a little bit of fun. Starting off with this.
What I would just say is this. I roll out of bed. I have people attacking me from all angles. It's been happening for many, many years. And if you look at the good thing about it, though, is like if you take a crisis situation like COVID, the good thing about it is when you're an elected executive, you have to make all kinds of decisions. You got to steer that ship. And the good thing is that the people are able to render a judgment on that, whether they reelect you or not. And I'm happy to say, in my case, not only did we win reelection, we won with the highest percentage of the vote that any Republican governor candidate has in the history of the state of Florida.
Oh, damn. Look at the shots being fired, the relative shots being fired. That is simultaneously, I think, the strongest, sharpest attack against Donald Trump right there. He doesn't say the name, of course, but he says, people wake up and attack me all the time, but that's just part of this thing. And in our case, no big deal, we got reelected. I'm not saying anything about the people who might not have gotten reelected, but in our case, I'm still in elected office. So that's good. It's cutting in a way. I like it. However, I want to briefly evaluate with you, Jayar, is that going to be enough? Because he didn't even say, as far as I saw, maybe in the extended comments, he says Trump.
He didn't.
But this is, I feel like there was a handful of people trying to do this the last time around, or not the last time around, but the previous time around. Like, I'm not gonna descend down to that level. I have a serious job to do, and the people like me. Okay, maybe that's enough. What do you think, Jayar?
He might be
able
to
take down Trump.
No, he might be able to not descend to that. But the thing is, as far as taking out Trump, it's going to have to literally be because of the scenarios, because of the situation, because of the loss of power, because of the 30 to 40 different, legal issues that Trump is having to deal with. So it's kind of ripe. It's perfect for Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis was, I think, weighing his options to see whether or not Donald Trump was really going to get caught up with some of these things that he's been up to. I think the majority of Republicans, because you saw when he ran in 2013, they didn't like his ass. And then after he started winning, after people started coalescing around, they're like, I guess I'll follow too. They were the sheep that jumped on board and they became MAGA. Now that they think MAGA is not really the power structure anymore that can win, that's the bottom line, it turns into let's find a different option. And he thinks he's the one. I think a lot of people think that. So it's more of a striking while the iron is hot, and not because of his great personality and how much people love him and his great policies and all that stuff. That's why he says stupid things like, I'm getting this attack from all angles. How many different angles are there that you can be attacked from? Are deep-rooted conservatives attacking you? Are the people who are supporting you over your hatred towards the LGBTQ and children and books and schools and black history classes, are those the people that are attacking you? Because that's what you're pushing. Imagine if
he doesn't seem as concerned about that.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. This guy who's been attacked from every angle is attacking every other angle. Somehow he's the victim, because that's the fuel that he's gonna try and get to push through this.
I feel really bad for him. But I lost the comment, but I believe it was Carrie in the YouTube chat was like, I didn't know he was talking about Trump. That's maybe the point, or maybe that's the issue.
The question did mention Trump, to give the credit to how
the question did.
The person asked, said Donald Trump has been attacking you on this, and that. Do you have any thoughts?
Yes, exactly. So the people in the room, it was clear. And so when they cheer at the end of it, it's clear that they like those attacks. But of course, they're going to a DeSantis speech. They're DeSantis supporters at this point. It's just, is that how you peel off Trump supporters, who he'll need to win the primary? We'll see. So this is largely in response to that question to Trump made campaign appearances, if they can be called that. They were very small, in New Hampshire and South Carolina. He said that DeSantis would be disloyal if he ran for the Republican nomination. It's just such a stupid way to pitch it. Oh, that's so pathetic. Don't do it, it would be disloyal. Oh, big alpha here. Anyway, he also he attacked DeSantis' record on COVID-19, and we're gonna have more of that in a bit. He contended that DeSantis was trying to rewrite history regarding his handling of the pandemic, including the governor's decision to allow lockdowns during the first months, as well as his aggressive early push for people to get vaccinated. And isn't it great to live in a country where two terrible people are fighting over who gave up fastest in stopping people from needlessly dying from COVID? Ooh, I can't wait for the future. But anyway, my just overall advice, I guess, if I would offer any advice to DeSantis, and at this point I don't want him to win, so would be, people tried to rise above it in 2016. Lots of people, some of them popular at that point, tried to rise above it. And rising it above it is giving you sort of like the aura of dignity or professionalism or something, which is fine for you to want that. But you should bear in mind that the Republican base doesn't care at all about those things. They don't choose the more dignified person. They don't choose the more professional person. They liked Herschel Walker. They liked Donald Trump. This is not exactly how you. I could be wrong, and we'll see. That's why we're going to be tracking it throughout the year. I feel like we need to see, and we're still waiting to see, a broadside, fire the cannon directly at Trump, hit him with something brutal and demeaning and cruel and heartless and immature. I hate it, but your base is gonna love it. That's how you actually win. And so far, he doesn't seem to be willing to do that. He wants to rise above it, and we'll see if he rises above it up until he gets buried.
He's trying to bring sanity back to the party, John.
If he was, I would love that. But as we're gonna get into, that's not actually what he's doing. It's purely rhetorical. That said, let's get maybe into the more fun part of this, because while he's keeping his powder dry, Donald Trump is ordering bullets on Amazon Prime on a daily basis. So let's jump into this.
I would be somebody who would be different. I think you see that I've been recognized nationally as being somebody who would be different, who would be a leader, who could be somebody like a Paul Ryan.
And of course that, 6-year-old video of Ron DeSantis? Trump bleeded that out with, wow, oh my God, you got him. He said he wanted to be like Paul Ryan. At that point, of course, for Ron DeSantis, I'm sure that seemed like a good call to make. Paul Ryan was an up and comer. He was a young gun and everything. His stock in the Republican Party has, of course, fallen in recent years. So Donald Trump is clearly, not just him personally, but his army of online weirdos are looking everywhere for old footage of Ron DeSantis, and they're finding some stuff. They found that. They found a video of Ron DeSantis talking about how we need to support Ukraine more vigorously. This is prior to the invasion. This is from way back, but they're looking for stuff, and so the low blows are coming. But right now, it's just in one direction. They're standing at each other. Ron DeSantis is trying to look stoic as Donald Trump repeatedly kicks him in the nads. And the video is one thing. The constant bleats, it's really something more. We've moved beyond just the Ron DeSanctimonious. He's getting kind of vicious. Here's what he bleated. Remember, I was 233 to 20 in the midterms and got 1.2 million votes more than Ron DeSanctimonious in the great state of Florida. Also 12 million more votes in 2020 than in 2016 and won. So I think there he means that he won the state of Florida, which is technically true, but in an election that he lost, which is technically pathetic. But he's talking there about like, don't worry, I'm still cool. People like me. Those like 20 losses were like Senate seats though. You lost the important ones, you doofus. But that's nothing. He moves on and says, thank you. The real Ron is a rhino globalist who closed quickly down Florida, great grammar, and even its beaches. Oh dear God, no. Loved the vaccines and wasted big money on testing. How quickly people forget. So that is basically my entire experience of the last couple of years is summed up in that tweet. So first of all, the closed quickly down Florida, Jesus, like AI chatbots can't take over fast enough. But he loved the vaccines, who Trump himself has spent the last 2 years saying, I should get credit for it. Now it's DeSantis who loves them, and he wasted money on testing. Florida lost tens of thousands of people more than it had any objective need to in the pandemic if they had decided to take it seriously. Ron DeSantis did that for you, Maka. He offered up a mountain of corpses that he sacrificed so that you would love him more. And now he's being attacked on that from Donald Trump, who occasionally did something good on the pandemic, like allowing vaccines to exist. But beyond that, I mean, he was the guy talking about needing to slow down the testing and all that. They're both terrible on this, and now they're fighting to prove to their base which was most terrible, which was more bloodthirsty when it came to their own base.
This is going to be one of the most annoying and entertaining primaries if Ron DeSantis actually does run. I guess we'll still have to say that because there's going to be stupidity being said both ways. There's going to be so many confusing points because again, they both were on the same side with so many different things, and now they have to find a way to separate themselves based off of the craziness that they both enjoy. Because Ron DeSantis was mini Trump. He openly said it. It was in that ad. I'm little Trump. I'm just like him. Yes, I love everything he does. They're gonna run that video. They're gonna run the hand gestures. They're gonna run the speeches. They're gonna run the way he says China. All these things, they're gonna talk about it. And Ron DeSantis is gonna have to find a way to differentiate himself from that person that he created. Who knows who Ron DeSantis is? Maybe his name is George Santos. I don't know, because he's trying and reinvent himself yet again politically, so he can get to this point. Because Donald Trump is going to point out all those things, the support he gave him, the wins that he had, which kind of, in my opinion, don't mean much now. It's a different stage, it's a different office that they're going to be running against each other for. But now they need to find some way to separate themselves, and it's going to get really stupid. Some of the points they make.
100%, yeah. Imagine like that's at the end of the day, that's the plan for George Santos. If he has to leave Congress, he's gonna show up at the governor's mansion in Florida and be like, "I'm George DeSantos, let me in." It's worked before. Don't count him out. Yes, and the we know that there's obviously a huge split between the left and the right or whatever, but like that you would have one side frustrated that we didn't do more to save lives, and the other side fighting to argue who gave up first is so sick. Ron DeSantis, very popular on the right. Some polls, in fact, show that in the primary against Donald Trump, even though he's not a declared candidate, he's winning some of these polls. And so we cannot rule out the possibility that he could be their candidate, that he could end up being president. So it's important that we know ahead of time who he is and what he's doing. We've been doing a lot of critical coverage of Ron DeSantis for years now. Here is just a taste of the very recent effect that he's having on Florida, what he could bring to the entire country. Update on a story we've already talked about. The College Board is now actually going to be stripping down its AP curriculum for African American studies. After heavy criticism from Governor Ron DeSantis, just today, they announced an official curriculum for its new advanced placement course in African American studies, stripped of much of the subject matter that had angered the governor and other conservatives. So they have purged the name of many Black writers and scholars associated with critical race theory, the queer experience, and Black feminism, ushered out some politically fraught topics like Black Lives Matter, one of the biggest social movements in the history of our country. Can't learn about it. It also added something new. Black conservatism is now offered as an idea for a research project. Honestly, sure, yeah, that should be something that you should look into. I think it's actually pretty interesting, although perhaps not for all the reasons that the right would have you believe. But they're stripping all this out because it's inconvenient. He is a racist man running to be the avatar of modern conservative racism. That's what it is. That's why this is here. Some of the other changes, and we're gonna do a discussion of all of this. He's floating two proposals designed to produce more executions, okay? Again, there's not enough human sacrifice going on. He wants to increase it. So the first, Ron DeSantis suggested during an appearance in the Florida Sheriff's Association, was to allow juries to sentence someone to die even if the jury vote is not unanimous. Fine, have a supermajority, he says, adding that execution should be permitted if maybe 8 out of 10 or something of a jury's members vote for the death penalty. I love throwing or something into a proposal that will result in people dying. That's a fun approach to death. Current law right now requires unanimous juries for that, but that's just not enough. He wants more people to die. He knows the right wants more people to die. So you won't learn anything. If you end up in prison, you might well be killed. And we have more actually. But Jayar, what do you think about this?
Well, yeah, that's the whole idea. This is the stuff that he's gonna actually try and implement. So if anybody was gonna be smart about this potential primary between these two, he'd point those things out. But again, Ron DeSantis is a horrible human being, and he's gonna do whatever he can to gain more power. We saw it happen with, Kevin McCarthy trying to get the speakership, Donald Trump trying to enrich himself the whole time he was in office. So yeah, he'll move whichever way the hate moves. Who knows what he really believes? But he definitely believes in, hey, people's lives are expendable. I can say I'm tough on crime by killing more people by the state. That's really easy. I don't care about people's lives. I mean, pro-life. I mean, we have to actually look out for the family structure, but let's keep murdering people. It's fine. They can say this stuff and no one will stop and go, wait a second. You guys have a bit of a conflict of your morals that you have. It doesn't matter. They'll just say, hey, those libs hate you more. And they'll go to that aspect. It's gonna be all kinds of collisions like this. And folks will have to think about it and analyze it, like which I'm sure you're gonna be doing as we go into these primaries. your head is gonna be spinning, because after you say all the truths and point out exactly what reality is, people still go, yeah, but he's gonna own the Dems. And that's all he knows they care about.
Yeah, they don't care. I mean, I have to imagine that he is gonna face so much pushback from Marjorie Greene, who's worried about the state of our prisons and how people don't have civil rights and civil liberties and all that. No, they don't care. These people aren't really people, just kill them. That's what he has to say. Also, by the way, he wants to expand the death penalty to incorporate pedophiles as well. They want pedophiles to be murdered by the state as well. And again, the small government that'll be murdering more people. By the way, I know if you support the death penalty, then you might think, well, that's perfectly reasonable. Whatever what they're doing is reprehensible. I don't support the death penalty for literally anything. I think it's needless. But there's also another argument, by the way, for why you wouldn't do this. Not coming from me, but from the Supreme Court. They rejected this expansion of the death penalty already back in Kennedy versus Louisiana. Kennedy warned that if sexual assault of a child carried the same penalty as a murder, that would endanger children, because a state that punishes child rape by death may remove a strong incentive for the rapist not to kill the victim. I don't know how reasonable that is. I just know that I hate that this is the sort of stuff that we're gonna have to be constantly discussing. I'm gonna throw one other thing though there, because this is all big substantive constitutional changes, or I should say unconstitutional changes, because the Supreme Court has already ruled it out. He also, this is just before we went live, he announced that he is actually now, it was a rhetorical thing before, now he is adding permanent tax relief for gas stoves to his budget proposal. Democrats want your gas stove, and we're not gonna let that happen. Democrats don't want your gas stove. That was literally never a thing, and he knows that. Also, like less than 12% of stoves in Florida are gas. It's not a thing. It's not only not a real thing in the way that these culture war issues are never a real thing, it literally has nothing to do with Florida. But of course, he's going to do this. It's just to deliver for the base, the Florida base who doesn't have a gas stove.
Oh, really?
Anyway, super fast. We're way over.
We're already. It's fine. It's a side note. Let's keep going.
Apologies. Okay, we're gonna take our second break a little bit early. We do have a lot more news to get to, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. There's not enough time. Let's go fast. Let's jump into the C-Block video.
Nikki Haley called me the other day to talk to me. I talked to her for a little while, but I said, look, go by your heart if you want to run. She's publicly stated I would never run against my president. He was a great president.
So again, an evaluation of whether someone would run for president from the point of view of Donald Trump is always, are they loyal or not? Well, great president he might have been, but Nikki Haley is now apparently planning to launch her run. And you don't have to wait very long if you're the 3 to 7 people who have been eagerly anticipating this. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is going to be running. The special announcement is coming on February 15th. A member of Haley's inner circle confirmed the announcement. Why is that in quotation marks? Does she have such a notorious inner circle that we're supposed to be speculating about who it is? I literally couldn't name a single person that's worked for her, and I doubt many people could. In any event, she is gonna be running. She served as a US ambassador to the UN under former President Donald Trump. Ambassador to the UN is a very important position. Sometimes under Democrats, generally for Republicans, it's designed to insult the UN and people who care about what happens around the world. But in any event, there are people in the Republican Party that consider Nikki Haley to be a less insane, more moderate, more reasonable alternative to Donald Trump. She's considered more of an actual politician, which is why I anticipate that this is not gonna really go anywhere, but I get things wrong all the time. So Jayar, what do you think about her presidential bid?
It might be the wrong timing. I was talking earlier about Ron DeSantis might have the right time because of how people are sick of him being Trump, but then also he's like striking while the iron's hot. He's the most hateful person in the Republican Party right now, along with Trump. But he's maybe that next guy, a little younger, not as annoying to them and all that, right? So, but the thing is here, that whole disloyal thing, he's gonna push that line because he thinks everyone thinks in his own brain, because he can't escape the little head that is just telling him what to do. Let me give you an analogy. There's the DeSantis's and the Nikki Haley's of the world. They're kind of like understudies to Trump. If you become this understudy, now you become this, say in sports, you become the head coach when you were an assistant coach before. Eventually, you may play against your mentor. The mentor doesn't go into the game. You're gonna now compete and say, you know what? that assistant coach I had that's now enjoying success on his own team, he's being so disloyal, trying to beat me. That's a shame. That's the name of the game. They're always trying to get more power. This is politics, bro, and this is Republican politics. So it's dirty ways to try and get ahead. So you've built up some people that basically learned from you, I guess, and now that they're going to challenge you, they're being disloyal. That argument's just not going to work.
Well, and it's shortcut for the MAGA base. It's like what they do not want to try to make this election about, from Trump's point of view, is I want you to weigh the platforms of the different candidates, our governing style, and then make pros and cons and choose accordingly. It's loyal good, disloyal bad, choose loyal. That's all it is. It's the Sesame Street approach to politics. In any event, that's all I have to say about Nikki Haley. We'll see if she merits much coverage going forward. She is, I would say, amongst the Republicans that might run, more accomplished than most. And again, that's probably a bad thing for her. In any event, with that said, why don't we move on to our E-block? Let's jump into that. Close out the hour.
They've got some bad hombres in the AG's office, and I mean they've been staffing up over there with killers.
Yeah, the AG's office.
They understand to stop Carrie Lake, they're not going to be able to play conventionally. I mean, this is outrageous. You're sitting there in a court case, and they're going to come after you with criminal charges. Am I right? Is that what your understanding is? They're going to try to criminalize this?
Yeah, class 6 felony. They're going to try to go after me for telling people about these bogus signatures, hundreds of thousands of them.
Carrie Lake might, in fact, be in trouble thanks to those. I'm reading bad hombres from Steve Bannon there. Yes, she apparently did commit this class 6 felony, which is an actual crime, but because it's targeting a right winger, we're not supposed to care about it. Well, let's see how much we actually care. Arizona Secretary of State, one of these bad hombres, Adrian Fontes, has sent a criminal referral to the state's Attorney General, Chris Mays, arguing that Lake, in one of her social media posts, committed this felony by tweeting out pictures of voter signatures. Now, I want us to do a little test run of the trial and weigh the evidence. Here's the tweet. Let's bring it back up. There's the signatures. I think we got her. She definitely did it. It's right there. I think it's still up. You committed the crime. Now, we can debate how serious of a crime this is. I don't think that you should be revealing that stuff. I don't know for sure in this case whether those individuals would care, if they even know. This doesn't bother me nearly as much as a lot of the other things that she has done. But she has actually committed this crime, Jayar. What do you think should happen?
No, that's one of those things though, right? And they'll complain about it because it's an actual crime, as we know. But then they'll say, look at them trying to come at me for anything possible. That's what happens when criminal investigations, when someone's associated with a crime, no matter how minor part they played, they still get investigated for it if it's serious enough. So she's doing all this, still talking and challenging and getting rejected by the Arizona Supreme Court for her challenges to this election and her best impression of Donald Trump for election denialism. She's eventually, I think this is part of it, many of these authorities are like, okay, we get like 6 things on you. Let's start finding anything that we can because we need you to stop. And she won't, but she likes the attention so much, she's stuck in the middle. Like they're still talking about me, her ego is still fed. But at the same time, she's facing some charges, which isn't very good for her.
Yeah,
it's backfiring.
Look, I realize that I very frequently on the show said that I don't think that intent should matter. I think that if we're gonna have a law, it should be applied. In this particular case, I don't know. Maybe I've just been so beaten down by the daily crush of news that I can't. I know, Carrie Lake, I'm a lefty, so I hate you, and I want the deep state to take you out, but I don't really care. I'm fine with this.
John,
she's done terrible things. What's that?
The soft filter has clouded your judgment on Carrie Lake. She's got
probably
you.
What
You're in the trance.
There's just something about her. She just seems reputable. I don't know. I think let her go. Just blur her into the distance. Anyway, no, I don't particularly care about this. And don't worry, she will be committing many more crimes in the future that I can get much more fired up about. I have every confidence in that. By the way, the spokesperson for the AG has not commented on this. So we have no idea if they're actually gonna do it, but it feeds the victim complex, so they love it on the right. Anyway, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for the first hour of The Damage Report. Thank you to those of you listening on the podcast, watching the linear platforms, much appreciated. There's a lot more show to come in the aftermath though. So on the other side, we're gonna talk about some more news. Jayar will be here, we'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.